be posted. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'll call the meeting of the Brownfield Steering Committee to order at 4:01 p.m. Thanks, everyone, for joining. First item on the agenda are amendments to the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda as issued?
I don't have any.
All right, thanks, Sue. Moving on to the next item, the approval of our June 12th, 2024 meeting minutes. I'd entertain a motion to approve. Those were circulated with the packet.
So moved.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Stephen did.
Steven.
Stephen seconded. Thank you. Any amendments or corrections to the meeting minutes as circulated? To the draft meeting minutes as circulated? All right, hearing and seeing none, they look good. Thank you, Sue. All those in favor of approving our June 12th meeting minutes, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ralph's abstaining. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving on to our status of funding, and I think, Sue, if you could pay particular or highlight our assessment funds, because it looks like, based on the review of your notes and the projects we have to review today, that we might not have enough money.
That is correct. We are running very low on our assessment funds. I'm hoping that we can might be able to apply for EPA funds this fall, but I'm not sure because we have to draw down 70% of those funds by the end of September. And right now we have, almost all of it committed, but we do not have a lot of it drawn down. So I'm working with the consultants right now to figure out if we're going to be able to do that, to get a better idea if we're even close or not. One thing that I do have is some extra money for my time in that grant. I think for two reasons. One is that we've gone through this money pretty quickly. Two is that it's taken me less time since I haven't been sending each project out to bid. I've just been assigning it to a consultant, and that's taken much less time. So I think I can reallocate some of those funds. The other thing is that I just found out today that there are more state assessment funds available. So it looks like I will have some access to those funds. So I think, that will help us, at least in the shorter term.
Great. And Sue, are there particular projects that we've committed to that aren't drawing down, that are maybe taking more time than we thought?
They're mostly, getting up and going. There's a bunch of phase twos that are, $40,000 to $50,000, and it's taking a while to get the SQAPs approved and those kinds of things. So it's just kind of a slow process. That's really part of it. That is the site-specific quality assurance plan, and that is required for any time there's testing on a site. The consultants have to lay out exactly how they're going to do the testing, where, and then either EPA and the state have to approve that plan before they actually do the testing. Mm-hmm. They need to agree that those testing spots are in the correct locations. Maybe they need more, other things like that.
Thank you, Sue. I was about to ask that, actually.
Sorry. It's a lot of lingo.
Yeah.
Just can I ask another question? When you say you can free up some funds because of your time and because of additional state money, can you give us a sense of how much in a ballpark way, and compared to, the prospect of running out of money, do you think we should be concerned about that? Or is this kind of funding that you can free up going to be enough to fill the gap?
I mean, it will be enough for the immediate future, the EPA funding, probably about $20,000 more. The state funding, I found out that I think they have some extra funding from this last round. So they might allocate that to us first. And then if we use that, they may be able to allocate more to us in the future. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, we should, keep it in the back of our minds and think about it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Because Sue, if we don't apply for funds from the EPA now we'll have to wait another year, correct?
Yeah, and then, it takes from the fall till the next spring to get the funds in place. So there's a lag time there.
All right, we started peppering you with questions before you even started reviewing the status of our funding, so thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to the applications?
Do you think you can just sort of breeze through the funding? And so it looks like
Oh,
yeah, just to give us a quick
Right.
review.
Right. So right now we have about $6,000 left in the state assessment funds and 43,000 in the EPA grant. And then the rest is all the cleanup funds, which really have not changed in a while because we haven't approved any new projects, and we're still waiting and crossing our fingers on the Bellows Falls train station that happens and goes through. And if it does, they may need additional funding in the future. Bonnie, do you want to say anything about that?
We will need additional funding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So it seems like we have I'm rounding now because I'm being lazy, but $64,000 from the state currently. If you rearrange the funds,
6,400.
6,400, sorry. And then if you rearrange funds, it looks like you have about 63. If we have the 43,000 in assessment funds, plus maybe you can rearrange 20,000, that gives us
Right.
about 63. So it looks
Yeah,
like we have rough round numbers about 70,000. Is that okay? All right,
That's
thanks.
correct.
Do you want to bring on anything? Thanks for continuing to put a list of consultants in so we can see what consultants are doing what jobs. It looks like we're using all of them, which is great.
Yes, now we are. Yep.
Does anyone have any questions about the list of consultants and how they're being used? Okay, hearing and seeing none, let's move on to the app.
Sorry, it took me a second.
Elizabeth?
So Stone shows up quite a bit. Like, I'm curious how, there's some that are being used more than others, and
Well, Stone, we have, okay, so there's a number of things happening there. One of them is the Bellows Falls Bike Project. They brought that to us because they had done a phase 1 pro bono for the bike project, and then they came to us for additional funding, which the state has also helped directly on that. Then the projects on the Under the Hill, the Penta-Wyman, these are in Bellows Falls, Adams Gristmill and TLR are all neighboring projects. And Stone was already working on at least one of them. And the state asked if we could have the same consultant work on those 3 projects because they really just interact with each other so much.
yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
That's how that happened. Yeah.
So while we're talking about consultants, are there any that you have had issues working with or concerned about?
The only thing was one of our past pre-qualified consultants, Sanborn had didn't do appropriate notification recently on one of the projects, but they're not on our list anymore, so I'm not too concerned about that.
Thanks.
All the others have been, good.
All right. So let's move on if nobody Any other questions? Onto the applications. And maybe, Sue, what we should do today, just because we're trying to figure out how to best utilize our funds, is look at the 3 that we have pending for decision today, and then go back and talk about, make sure we all believe them to be eligible to come into our, go through the matrix, make sure they're eligible, and then have a discussion about how we should think about whether we can fund them and how to fund them. Does that make sense? Is everyone okay with that approach? All right, thanks.
Okay, so the first is Groundworks project, the former Morningside shelter in Brattleboro. That building, the original building is coming down and they're rebuilding a brand new shelter there. Obviously, this is a significant need for our community. They funded some of the early assessment work on their own, and now they have come to us to ask for assistance helping with a site investigation to further delineate the extent of the contamination that has been identified there, which is basically, typical urban soil stuff, but they're just, the state wants to determine, how bad the situation is and, what kind of remediation will be needed. So CAS worked with Groundworks on the previous phases. And so we'd probably continue to work with them on this. And they have developed an estimate for $19,580 for this additional work. So this project is in Barella, and therefore it would be eligible for the state assessment funds. So at first I was thinking, oh, this will be a problem, but I think if we get new state funds in place, it should work pretty good. Do you want to do the evaluation form or any other questions first, actually?
I have a question, Sue, and it's not so much about the project, but it's more about the state requesting all this testing on soils. I mean, to my knowledge, I don't know what the phase 1 turned up on previous uses, but I thought it was a farm with a building and, now is the state getting to the point where they're requiring us to test soils all over the place? I guess is my question. Have you seen that or?
Yeah, there seems like a lot of that is happening, and they've identified lead here and,
Yeah, I mean,
so yeah.
It's just one to watch and to think about, as we're trying to build housing and reduce costs, if all of a sudden they're requiring us to test everywhere,
So I would say that is exactly what's happening, and Vermont standards are higher than EPA standards in some cases. So we were just working on a project up in Windsor and had to remove 4 feet of soil that if it had happened right across the river, we would have just left it in place. And it's definitely a costly add-on to any project.
Yeah, and it's tricky because I don't want to pretend that, these chemicals don't have effects either, but it feels a little bit like, the state requiring all this historic stuff on transportation, it just, it makes our development more expensive, and it's maybe just something we all need to be watching on.
Yeah, they also adopted the I rule, which basically turned what used to be a soil management plan into a corrective action plan. So it's to be a fairly simple procedure to document what you were going to do. Now goes through 5 different steps. I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's very, they've made something that used to be simple, and it actually has the same action steps, but the process has gotten way more complicated to arrive at the same place. And it is pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
So that's our legislatures, right? Legislators.
And the
rulemaking
that interpret the legislation for the Department of Health.
Yeah, because I looked at this one kind of, Sue, like you were saying, I'm like, how's this a brownfield site? But if it's in Brella, then obviously it's the state. I was kind of, how are we going to get this past the EPA? But okay. Just enough for now.
All right. Gabby, do you want to should we do the evaluation form now, you think, or?
Yeah, let's just do it all. And so the evaluation form really is to provide us some guidance. So let's just think about the matrix points, and as we go through each project, I think might be helpful, at least for my thinking.
Okay, so this project has, we'll have some construction jobs and some permanent jobs, which, previously did. It's not a historic structure or in a historic district. And yes, demolition is proposed. Let's see, it is the entire project is addressing those experiencing homelessness. The next question is about neighborhood benefit, improving lower moderate income area. Yes, near other brownfield sites. I'm not aware of that. But the other community benefit, of course, is a shelter for those lacking housing. In terms of a local priority, I would say is probably pretty important for the community. Do you agree, Sue? Yeah. And there's
For the region.
For the region, right. Absolutely. Open space, that's not really going to change. What's there is there already. Groundworks is hoping to partner with Efficiency Vermont and Green Mountain Power to design to the most efficient standards that they can. And they're exploring using prefabricated construction and establishing a carbon budget, they said. Plus, there is a bus line that comes close by.
Any questions? I mean, I think in summary, this is a high priority locally and regionally. Fulfills a dire need for the community, has some energy efficiencies, and will retain jobs. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah.
I don't have any questions about this one. I feel like this is one of the ones that should and could come out of EPA federal funds. Am I on track with that being possible, Sue?
It is, but it's also possible to use the state funds on this site. So I was thinking I might do that because it's already umbrella.
All right. Let's move on, because I feel like we're gonna have to piecemeal state and federal funds and try to piecemeal everything together. And so maybe we could just keep moving through and then sort of rank the priorities of the projects and see how we could try
I have
to.
notes about all that already, so. So the next project is the Leonard Block, 12 to 14 Elliott Street. And I just learned a little bit more about this project at the Housing Coalition meeting yesterday, where they said that the funding for this project and another one that's underway at the SD Block is partially, at least, through an anonymous donor at the Vermont Community Foundation who wanted to fund housing for refugees. And so they're figuring out how they can specifically target that population. They would like to build, I think it's 10 new units upstairs and have a retail space downstairs. This site was maybe kind of unclear, dry cleaner in the past, but also there are a lot of plumes on Elliott Street related to the other dry cleaners along there. So that's why they want to do this phase one. Also, they're a prospective purchaser. They had the site recently registered on the National Register of Historic Places. I think it does address a significant need for the area. And they're just asking for a phase 1 at this point, although they included Barella enrollment, which we can only fund with the state funds that I thought were running out. So I was thinking, well, we could just give them, what we have left in the state funds and have them match, the other $1,000 or so that was left. We have done that with them in the past. But, and that's still an option to close out that round. Or we could consider potentially funding it with the new funds that we may get.
And I'm just also sort of trying to get a sense of timing too. It seems like this one, it seems like it's still in, well, it's early stages. They're all in early stages. They're all assessments. Do we have like the sense of timing was sort of, design development sort of happening through the end of the year? I'm just trying to figure out if we can also sort of maneuver based on timing, different projects, if we need to.
Maybe. From what they said the other day, it sounded like they were hoping to move it along fairly quickly and get folks in, but can't remember the date on that. Maybe Sue does. She was at that meeting.
I think they were, sorry, I was looking up something else, but are you asking for when do they hope to be in construction? In the new year.
Yeah.
So
I thought, yeah.
So what's the value of the potential state funding that we could access?
Well, in the past, they've been giving us $50,000 chunks at a time. And so if we got, we'd probably get an additional 50,000 to start with. But then if we use that, we may be able to get more. This is partially because not all the RPCs are using these funds so quickly.
Good on us.
So can you clarify, this is for a phase 2? It seems like they've had the phase 1 done.
Wait a minute. Let me see. Oh, yeah, it was. You're right. I'm sorry. But they were still asking for Brella. That's why I was confused. Yeah, so it's a very limited phase 2, just trying to figure out if there's, any vapor intrusion, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So the estimate that Cass put together, I thought seemed pretty low for phase 2 testing and just the experience with Elliott Street. Do you feel confident that the work plan that they are recommending is gonna, if it's just vapor intrusion, I guess that's different, because like at McNeil's, they're like soil boring in Elliott Street well, doing well boring, and that's similar dry cleaning concerns. I just wondered if you thought the 8,000 was kind of realistic, or will we see that be higher?
Well, usually things come in as, they're proposed from these folks. So I could ask them more about it, but I kind of am trusting there.
Yeah, okay. You don't need to ask them. It just seems really low for a phase 2.
I know.
I'm sure the state's going to pile on some more stuff. So.
Right. Yeah, I think that's why, though, because, the building is staying in place and it's really just about the paper.
Okay.
Okay, so we should probably look at the selection form for that project, unless there are other questions. Okay. So in this project, there will be construction jobs, probably, not really much else. But the focus is workforce housing for refugees who can help with the region's labor shortage in terms of other economic benefits. It is in National Register District, and the building is listed itself. And they are planning to reuse it. No demolition here. The entire building will be workforce housing, and there are definitely other brownfields sites in the area. I'm not sure about how much of a priority this is. Sue, do you have any comments there?
So it's housing, high priority.
High, right?
Mhm.
There's no open space. The building probably takes up almost all the site. But they are proposing, let's see, a new thermal envelope and a rooftop solar array. And the project is also in the heart of downtown, walkable, close to transit, etc., on sewer and water.
Any other questions? It just seems like it's a, again, high priority project, refugee, low income house, LMI housing, in the downtown area.
Mhm.
Last one is the Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club. So I don't know if you're familiar with the building on Flat Street. It's an old garage, actually. It's kind of fun inside, but it's probably not the most practical building today. So they would like to demolish it and rebuild a brand new 4-story building at this site. They have already been working with Stone on this project, and they are requesting funds for a site investigation. $45,000. At first I thought, well, maybe we could fund half of it or something, but if we are able to fund Morningside with the state funds, we probably have about, just enough remaining in our EPA funds, maybe even a little bit more once I do some reallocation of the budget. So those funds are probably available, I believe. Any questions on that specifically?
I have a question on their eligibility because I can't see how long they've occupied or owned that building, but aren't they in the chain of liability?
They may be,
Mhm.
and that I believe is why they did not even worry about a phase 1, but that doesn't mean that we can't fund assessment work. Well, if they're liable themselves, then we couldn't, but if they are, the other one.
I'm just raising it as I think it might pop up as an issue.
Yes,
It's a
they
good
may
project.
be-
I would be happy to
Okay.
support it. I just
Mhm.
don't know if we'll get that past the EPA.
Right. And we'll
But
just
that's-
have to find out about that, right?
Mhm.
I would look into that for sure. I do that, of course, before
Yeah.
I approve funding.
It sounds like a great place to hang out if you're a kid, when you look at the activities that they're gonna offer in a brand new building.
I know. I was happy to see they still wanted to have a skate park.
A lot of kids already use it.
I bet. Yeah, so I'll review the site selection form. Again, here, jobs will be retained. 9 jobs they pointed out, construction jobs as well. Other economic benefits include the Boys and Girls Club mission, which is to support young people reaching their full potential, which includes career readiness. This is located in the historic district, but it is not listed itself specifically. So I'm not sure if it would be a contributing structure. I think they might have commented on that. I have to look at that again. Do you know, Sue, off the top of your head?
I do not know off the top of my head. I mean, it may have been at one point. I can't see how it would still be.
Right.
They could probably get it delisted because I think
Yeah.
if it's still listed as contributing, it'd be surprising. Been
Yeah.
altered pretty heavily, but
Yeah. And then in terms of neighborhood benefits, it would improve probably a low mod income area. There are other brownfield sites, and it's a safe place for kids to hang out and learn all kinds of things. In terms of a local priority, I would think it would be pretty high. And yeah, Sue's shaking her head. There is no green space again. In terms of other sustainability issues, they're hoping to use a mass timber frame and incorporate energy efficient techniques such as photovoltaic panels, etc. And of course, it's located downtown near the transportation center, accessible to public transportation and all.
I think too, if they designed a building that was more in alignment with the style of downtown, it would really improve the streetscape on that block. Because it kind of stands out between, you know, historic buildings, a historically designed building that's reminiscent of historic design. And then you've got this kind of oddball building in between. And
I'm not sure that's the case, Elizabeth.
no,
I think it's a pretty modern design.
If they're proposing timber frame, mass timber.
Is that right?
Probably,
yeah, that's what I didn't know what the design was going to look like, but
Yeah, but that's going to have to get approved locally by the
Yeah.
design review committee.
yeah, and I know from our experience with the design review committee, they don't want a replica of the history of downtown because they want a more accurate representation of the building as it's built in today. I guess what I'm saying is a building that's 4 stories in that location would fit it would fit more in the landscape of that block.
Yeah.
Than a low concrete building. So
It'll be better than a low concrete building.
yeah, yeah.
I get your point.
Whether it's historic or whether it's modern, you know, as long as it's designed to fit in, I think it'll just improve. So in terms of the streetscape, I think it'll be a real improvement.
So those are the 3 assessment projects.
Yep. So, I mean, it seems like, I mean, I'm trying to do this by process of elimination. It seems like they are all good, high priority projects that would help Brattleboro. They would either retain jobs or provide much needed housing. So I think, does anyone disagree that they are all good projects that should come into our program if possible?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Unless anyone thinks otherwise, say it now. So I guess my next question is there a way where we could fit all of these projects in with our current funding or expected funding? Because it seems like you potentially have a plan, Sue, with using state funds for groundworks. Which it seems like it's the 6,400 plus maybe another 50,000.
Right. Right. And then we could probably, let's see. The Leonard block is going to be entering into Barella too. So we could probably do both of those with the state funds actually.
Okay.
And then do the Boys and Girls Club with the remaining EPA funds. And then I think we would still have some funding left.
And when will you find
Not
out
a
about
lot.
state funding?
Pardon me?
When will you find out about whether we get the additional 50,000 in state?
I just have to reach back out to Cindy Ingersoll at Mount Scottney because she divvies out these funds. And then she just puts it in our account.
Oh,
It's pretty easy.
Okay, so it seems like you're fairly, I mean, I'm trying to figure out, you're fairly confident that this will happen quickly if we
Yes.
want to move on these.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to just say one thing about the groundworks project. If all the funding's not in place and we had to prioritize, because those beds were lost, I feel like that would be the highest priority because it's replacing something that has been lost that used to exist in the community. And so if we had to make a choice of timing and priority, if all the funds aren't in place right now, that's how I would At least out of the three, I would put that in the front of the line for that reason.
Mhm.
That's
That makes sense.
interesting because I was wondering if we were short on funding and we didn't fund that because of the urgent needs of beds, if the state there might be additional housing funding that would pay for that testing so I was kind of thinking reverse, not out of project
we might have some
worthiness,
other
but just out
opportunity.
of like, is there other housing money out there that could help fund that since
Mhm.
the state's requiring it? But
Yeah, I don't know.
I know they love to see you leverage as, all the different sources, but if it meant not moving forward, I mean, obviously I can't speak on their behalf, and I don't know who they're funding. I don't know where they're getting their funds, so.
Right, neither do I. He may have sent me that, John, I'm not sure.
It's likely a very high priority for the state, though.
I would think so.
Does that give us any leverage in getting additional state funds, Sue?
I think we just get first what we were allocated and then what's left over. There's really no application process or anything.
How much is in the pool, do you know?
I don't know how much is remaining.
Okay. So you don't know whether even 50,000 is remaining?
I believe it is because Cindy told me today that, yeah, it could come out of one of two sources. Because there's this year's leftover and then there's another year's.
Oh, so that sounds pretty you sound pretty confident.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. That's good.
All right, so it seems like just based on my numbers, that you feel pretty confident in the $50,000 addition. We would have 56.4 out of the state funds then. And if we were to fund the first two projects with the state funds, that would leave us with 28,000 and change remaining.
Mhm. And we may be able to access more of that in the future too.
And if we use that, it might, right, if we utilize those funds faster, it might allow us to leverage more.
Mhm.
Okay, so does everyone feel comfortable using those funding the first two projects out of the state funds, assuming we get the additional $50,000?
Yep.
I see nods. Okay, good. We'll turn this into, we'll turn it into a mass motion eventually, but I just want to make sure we're on the right track here. All right. And then Boys and Girls Club. We have, if you can rearrange funds, EPA funds, Sue, we have about 63,400. And this would be 45,655, leaving us with 17,000 and change. Their EPA funds, which will leave us with about 45,000. Assuming you get the additional state funding we expect.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I think that sounds right. If I followed it out correctly.
Is everyone understanding what I'm saying and checking my math?
Mhm.
Right, we're expecting 50,000 to be added to the 6,400 of the state funding. We
Mhm.
take the first two projects out, we end up with about 28,000 remaining from that pot. We have 43,000 in our EPA assessment funds. Sue believes she can rearrange about 20,000. That leaves us with about $63,000 in our EPA funds. If we fund the full Boys and Girls Club project, that leaves us with about $17,000 left. We combine those two pots, we end up with about 34,000, I believe. 28, 38, 45,000, sorry. So we have we would have about 45,000 remaining should another additional project come forward, and if we weren't able to apply for more funds and or get more state funds.
Right.
Is everyone comfortable with that scenario?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll try and make a mass motion, or I guess put all of the projects in a slate. Thanks, Stephen. And someone's going to correct me if I say something problematic.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion to accept the Groundworks, Leonard Block, and Boys and Girls Club sites into our WRBRI program, and that we fund the Groundworks and Leonard Block projects out of our state funding, assuming we get the additional 50K, and the Boys and Girls Club will be funded out of the EPA assessment funds that we have. Somebody make that motion?
Do we ask questions after the motion and?
Yeah,
second?
let's do the motion and then ask any additional questions.
So
Okay.
moved.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Do I have a second?
I'll
Aye.
second.
Okay, now, thank you, Bonnie. All right, additional questions or thoughts?
So if we don't get the state funding, which seems like a unlikely scenario, but if we don't, do we need to add to the motion what happens, or do we just come back and address that? Because obviously there's not enough funds in there for either one of them as a standalone project as the balance.
You told me today those funds were available. So I'm not too worried.
I mean,
So-
I would suggest that since Sue feels pretty I get the sense she feels pretty confident that let's go forth and assume we can get the funds. I think we should come together once we have more information if she does not get the funds, so we know what we actually need to make happen and what we have to make that happen. I don't want to add another meeting. I know, but
I mean, I'm still just concerned about Boys and Girls Club's eligibility. So I would rather Sue be able to have some flexibility to figure out if she can fund these, where it comes from.
Oh, yeah. Well, but if the Boys and Girls Club isn't eligible for EPA funding, it's probably not going to be eligible for the state money.
Yeah. Well, Groundworks, how were they eligible? They owned that site too. But they got into Brella, so I'm comfortable
Yeah.
in you figuring out how to get it funded. I'm just,
Okay.
I mean,
Right. Well, we can prioritize. I can try and do it this way that Gabby proposed. And if that doesn't work, then, see
Yeah.
if I can figure out something else.
I'd be
and
comfortable with that.
we could do a friendly amendment that says that if, give staff the leeway to fund,
Mhm.
assuming there's funds assuming we have sufficient funds to fund them as necessary, depending on the outcomes of the eligibility review with the state and the EPA. Does that sound?
That sounds good, Gabby. Thank
Okay.
you.
Luckily it's being recorded and I don't have to repeat what I just thought.
That's good.
So Bonnie, you're okay with that?
Mhm.
Elizabeth, you're okay with that? Elizabeth, you made the motion, Bonnie seconded. We're okay with the amendments. All right. Any further discussion? Those are good comments, so thank you all.
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor of that motion, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Everyone voted aye, so no one can oppose or abstain. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, y'all, for working through that and all your comments. It's a lot to think about all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And really good projects. Like, I'm really excited, Sue, to hear that we're using our funds quickly. I'm really excited that they're being deployed, in areas like Brattleboro where, the community needs these types of developments,
Mhm.
So I think these are good problems for us to have, not enough money, so.
Yes.
I will say, taking off my committee hat and putting on the user hat, that Sue is really great to work with and really makes the process go really well. So kudos to you, Sue. I don't know if that's why we're using our funds or if the need is great, but just know that
The need is great, for sure.
lots of
Yeah, but thank
compliments
you.
to you throughout the process.
So should we talk about the Basketville project?
Yep.
Yeah. So, Elizabeth, of course, knows more about this. This is one of their projects. This is a modification to their vapor system that has been in place. And we previously funded an assessment looking at what was happening with that system. They were kind of hoping that they might be able to turn it off, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So the next round of funding that they need would be cleanup funding, and I don't have an application from them yet. They have had some personnel changes, and the new person seems good so far. She's just kind of figuring it all out, I think. And she said she would get me a Part A application soon. This was just recently that we connected with each other on this. So we could ask them to come back in October, or try and help them to move ahead quicker, because as you know, it takes a little more time to get through the cleanup approval process with the different forms and the approval needed from the executive board. Any other
Yeah, right. So
thoughts?
because, does everyone understand that? So because this is some sort of a loan grant type of situation, it will need to be approved by the executive board. I guess, Sue, I think you should get them as far as possible, and if we need to have a special meeting, do that. Because I think the executive board values the steering committee's experience and review, personally.
Okay. And it is a small amount for cleanup funds. It's only $26,000. So, we could just decide to grant them this amount because it is, such a small amount, instead of requiring a grant and loan for, 20% of that or whatever. Something else to think about.
Do you want comment on that at this point? I mean, it seems like for 20,000, the administrative kind of oversight and tracking and payback doesn't really seem worth
That's
it.
kind
to
of
me.
what I think, yeah.
So I would be fine with a grant, and also agree with Gabby, whatever we can do to move it along. It's long been a site in the program.
Right. Right.
That's-
Okay, so I could move it along. Once we get the Part A, send it into EPA for their approval, and ask for the additional information in the Part B. And then, who knows when that will all happen, and when we have Brattleboro Savings and Loan review the funding information. I doubt they would have an issue because this is such a small amount. But whenever I feel like that's happening, maybe I could see if it's getting close to October, or if it's sooner, we could try and get together before that. Is that what you were suggesting, Gabby?
We can do that. I mean, I think if I'm nervous about approving funds for something I don't know about yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would. Okay, so would you want to see the Part A after it's done? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I mean, get everything together and move them forward. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know that we can, I wouldn't suggest going right to the executive board. I don't think they have the.
Right, yeah.
But I think
That's
if we
fine.
can move it forward, A, B, and then call a quick meeting, that would be.
Okay.
Ideal.
Yep.
Ideal from my perspective, but others,
Okay.
I welcome others' comments. All right, I'm taking silence to mean agreement. All right. All right, Sue, so just let us know when, if we need to have a special, again, I'm not trying to have extra meetings by any means.
Yeah. I will keep you posted on that, and yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Just a general question.
All right.
Who currently owns that? Is it Wyndham and Windsor Housing?
So this is Brattleboro Basketball
Okay.
Building. It's also referred to as the Daily Shoe Company
Oh,
on
okay.
Burge Street.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't put the address on, sorry. It's not the one in Putney.
Brattleboro. No, I would assume so. I did
Yeah.
not realize it was a.
So it's where Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust has their offices and they have housing in there.
I have a question. Gabby, did you say it would have to go to the executive board because it would be, if it was a loan? And is that true then for any loan that we give out with the funds?
It's for any cleanup funds usually. It goes to the executive board. Most of the time because almost all of them involve loans as well, or some sort of agreement that need to be made by a board that has authority to enter into a loan or some sort of underwriting agreement with whoever is the property owner or who's cleaning it up.
Yeah, so we have been doing it for just straight grants too.
Mhm.
When we were doing those earlier.
Mhm. Yeah, so generally assessment funds, the board, we have traditionally the board, the governing board and executive board, or we have the authority to admit programs into our Brownfields program and then distribute those funds, both the revolving loan and grant funds, the cleanup funds. It goes up to the executive board because it usually involves some sort of legal agreement. Any other questions before we move on to our active sites? All right. Again, thanks for putting all this together so in advance so we can take a look. Does anyone have any questions about the updates for the active sites that are listed?
And you can see all the phase twos that are underway, and that's, partially why the funding is running low.
All right, hearing and seeing no questions about the active sites. Now's the time for public comment to bring up anything that wasn't on the agenda. Hearing and seeing none, I'm gonna make one comment, and I think, Sue, maybe I feel like we sort of duplicate discussions when we go through the nomination form and then we go through our matrix, and I'm wondering if we can't just make them the same questions. That's my comment for today. So that when we go through the form, like we literally just give people the roadmap for what we want to, what we want to know about from them. So the matrix is in essence the form.
Let's see. The nomination or the matrix is helpful because if EPA ever wants a record that we're doing the right thing, good way to keep track of that. Let me think about how would be a better way to do that. I agree, though.
Yeah, let's talk about it. I just put it on the public comment. It's not on the agenda. It's just as we're going through things, I think there's a way to maybe make this more efficient and absolutely use our matrix, but maybe make the provide a roadmap, provide the information that we need in the matrix actually in the same order in the form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that we're not duplicating the discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're getting the information we need rather than sort of guessing.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so that's my public comment. Any other public comment? All right, hearing and seeing none, I would like to thank Sue Westa for all her prep and putting together these packages. Makes my life really easy. And then thank all of you for being prepared and still making my life really easy. I appreciate it. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Thanks, Bonnie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sue. Non-debatable motion. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Motion's unanimous. We're adjourned at 4:55 p.m. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.